Enter a world of unicorns, magic swamps, dwarves, and rainbows.
Woo! On this episode of the History of the Chorus podcast with Curtis and Josh, we take a look at the brand new Touché Amoré album, Spiral in a Straight Line. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at ItSurviveByPro for news and latest episode postings. Make sure to subscribe to the show, leave us a 5-star review, and write us a comment on YouTube or whatever podcast service you're using. And if you'd like to see us do some live streams, leave us a comment, tweet us the keyword stream. Now, without further ado, let's start the show.
The devil is in Atlanta. Army surrounded.
Up all night and late to wake, I swear there's nothing new. Lie in wait to validate, I swear I feel it too. Times like this, I ask myself, who's convincing who? The air is thin, I can hardly breathe as I take in the view. I spiral in a straight line like some clever reaction. I didn't know how I feel. Was I impressed that it happened? I spiral in a straight line like some clever reaction. I didn't know how I feel. Was I impressed that it happened? Welcome back to the History of the Chorus podcast, sponsored by Church of Seven Track, where each and every episode we take a look at the band from the core genre. Curtis, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Josh. What's going on, buddy?
Hello!
Oh, coming in hot there. Coming in hot. Was not ready because I couldn't even see you. So all I hear is just...
Are my levels okay? Is it up too loud?
No, you're good. It startled me is what it was because
Ah.
I couldn't see your face for a second there because I had other windows pulled
Hello!
up. So I wasn't expecting a yeah, what's going on, man?
Oh, another thing, another thing.
Surviving winter one day at
Mm-hmm.
a time,
Mm-hmm.
one moment at a time. How's those Northern Lights? A little vacation up there?
Yeah.
Oh, is that what that is?
Oh, yeah. Let's take care of that.
Oh, I thought that really was what you're wanting. I mean, I didn't care. Northern Lights are fine. It's fine. It's great. Terrific. Okay.
There we
Little raindrop.
go.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, Eric, Josh, wherever you are, uh, we're starting something new today, Josh. Normally we'll have, a new band to talk about that we haven't talked about before, but today we're actually going backwards in the timeline here. And we're going to catch up on a band that actually put out a brand new album at the end of last year, 2024. That is Touché Amoré. That brand new album is entitled Spiral in a Straight Line. We're going to have more of these episodes coming up here pretty soon in the next several months because we do have some new albums to catch up on. Coheed and Cambria, Under Oath just announced they're going to have a new album. We will put ourselves through that torture. So on and
Of
so
who?
forth. Under Oath.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh
I
God.
think, let's see. So I was trying to remember. So we got to do the
It'll
Flesh
be our
God
most
one,
negative episode to date.
right? We got to do our Flesh God episode on their new album, Opera. Silverstein's coming out with a new album this week, Annie
Mm-hmm.
Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
And then Spirit Box has got a new one coming out at the beginning of March. And then, of
Ugh.
course, the one we're most anticipated for, Coheed and Cambria, Vaxis 3, coming out in
Yes.
mid-March. Oh man, I forgot to ask you too. Did you see? I thought Impending Doom put out a new full-length album. They apparently put out a new EP, and then I started looking into it, and I'm like, dude, we've put out three EPs since the last full-length album. Why put out a full-length album? You couldn't put some of those EPs together and give me a full-length album? Like,
That would have taken 6 years, Curtis.
yeah, it's stupid, stupid. But anyway,
Isn't
um,
isn't it just down to the vocalist though? Isn't he the
no,
only
it's the three of
original?
them. As far as I
Oh,
know, it's
okay.
still just the three of them.
Okay.
What's the guitarist name that you liked? Is it Manny? Something?
Mm, I don't remember.
Can't remember off the top of my head, but there's three of them. But anyway, doing these episodes to review newer albums that come out from these bands that we've talked about before, but at the same time, it's also kind of catch up and connect and to continue the talk on these bands, not just leave them in the past, but to keep them up to date in our library. So, yeah, be on the lookout for more episodes like this one coming in the near future. What did you find out, Josh, on Impending Doom?
Well, I was just looking at this new EP.
Oh, I thought you were looking at the lineup too, or whatever. Because I'm pretty sure it's still just the three guys.
Yeah, Manny
Um,
Contreras is
okay,
guitars.
guitarist. Okay.
David Siddig is bass, and then old Brooke
Oh,
Reeves is on the vocals.
their Wikipedia says they've got a drummer since
Okay.
2019, Andrew Halsbar. But I thought there was only three guys at one point. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Yeah, that's Impending Doom. But let's talk about Touche Amore, Josh. Um,
Well, they're not nearly as heavy as Impending Doom.
oh, for sure not. If you're just not hearing of this band, Touche Amore, we recommend number one, go listen to them for yourselves, their full discography. But we also recommend that you go back and listen to the first two episodes of the History of Chorus podcast, all about Touche Amore, for a full layout of this band discography, member changes, so on and so forth. But if you're new to it and you're just kind of coming in now, here's a quick overhead view of what this band sounds like. Online magazine Pitchfork has described the band as, quote, reliably cathartic and anthemic melodic post-hardcore, while internet publication Stereogum stated in 2016 that, quote, if arena hardcore existed, this is how it might sound. It's kind of interesting. When I read that the first time, I was like, arena hardcore. That does not seem right because I feel like hardcore is meant for small venues.
Right, and also there's nothing hardcore about this. I I am so sick, Curtis,
Here we go.
of
Rant engaged.
the overuse of these terms that don't make sense for what you're putting it to. And I hear it all the time in music. Like I hate it when I hear somebody say like, "Oh yeah, like we're going to a hardcore show," and then I get this picture in my head of what the show is, and then it's a metal show, and I'm like, that's not a hardcore show." Like, but it's this like general, like just broad terminology that people use to describe things. Like, "Oh man, like they're like really punk," and I'm like, "What's punk about it? Tell me what's punk about it," because that doesn't sound like punk to me. That doesn't sound like any of the basic elements that make up punk music. That doesn't sound like that. Like I think punk and hardcore are the two like most overused terms. Like if it's hardcore, it needs to be shaved heads and straight edge. Like if it's punk, it has to be anarchy, no bass,
Mohawks.
and yeah, chaos. There's just
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate the like oh that's punk. It's like that's there's nothing punk about that.
Well, it's a
Let's
great
just
segue, Josh,
let's
because
just
now
call things what they are.
here's your chance to describe a quick thought. Not nothing too crazy, but describe to me the sounds that you hear from Touche Amore overall in their discography.
Um depression heavy spoken word vocals laid over Midwest emo.
Where's the hardcore?
No, there is no hardcore.
There is no hardcore. All
There's
right.
none. I guess I get what they're trying to say. It's like, oh, like it's chaos, but in an arena setting, which would typically be more like it's not a tiny venue where people are being thrown into the walls, you know?
I don't
I
know, man.
get
From
the
like their
comparison they're
earlier
trying to
stuff,
make,
yeah, from their
but
earlier stuff, I could see it being a hardcore show just from some of their like early sets. Small venue, people are flying all over the place. Music may not match that, you
Ah,
know.
yes, but that's kind of the point, Curtis. It can't be a hardcore show if there's not a hardcore band playing. Like just
Such a
because the vibe
gatekeeper.
is there, would you call the Chariot hardcore musically,
I
Curtis?
call the chariot avant-garde.
Musically,
Musically, I don't know. I don't even know what you would really call that. Chaos.
I
Chaos
don't think
core.
you can call that hardcore. Hardcore is Terror and the Warriors and Have Heart. Like that is hardcore. How I feel like I'm taking crazy pills right now. I feel like you're just another one of them, Curtis. That you
Me?
don't understand what hardcore music is.
No, I just think too where I understand what you're saying. I think people have, not me, I think people have taken the word hardcore and they're making it, oh, it's evolved. It's not this tiny little thing now. It's, you know what I'm
I
saying?
don't like that. That's the post-hardcore is the only
Well,
thing
that's
I'll
the
allow
world,
from that.
Josh. That's the world. Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean, I think that even like on their Wikipedia page, it's I've always known them as post-hardcore, Touche Amore, you know,
Post-hardcore to me has always felt like,
or melodic hardcore is another
yeah,
one
I was
that's
gonna
on
say like
here.
melodic chaos.
Right,
So that's where you get a lot of these bands that I feel like a lot of people like to say are hardcore bands, but they're really just post-hardcore bands.
right.
And that's the simplest, non-ranty way of putting this is that I think a lot of people just mislabel post-hardcore as hardcore
It's
or don't
hardcore.
really understand the difference between the two. Um, but yeah, that drives me nuts. Every now and again, I'll hear somebody say that, oh man, like that, the very like hardcore sound, like very punk sound. And I'm like, where? Tell me where. Show me. Point to one
Show
part
me.
of that that is an
Point on the
element.
map.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, in terms of lineup, Josh, nothing has really changed. I mean, this is I
I
remember
like to hear
from
that. That's good to
early,
hear.
yes, thumbs up from us. From early on in their discography, they had a few lineup changes here and there, but I think by the time you get to like Parting the Sea, and I think even maybe their debut album, they have the same lineup from that one. If not, then from their second album, Parting the Sea, to now has been the same lineup. No changes at all. Jeremy Baum on vocals, Clayton Stevens on guitar, Nick Steinhardt on guitar, Tyler Kirby on bass, and Elliot Babin on drums. So again, thumbs up from us. Consistency.
I mean, it's just a
So
good sign, like this late in the game, to all still be together. It clearly works, you know?
right.
There's like not any major rifts there, or this wouldn't work. So it's just, I don't know. It's nice to see that a band like could continue to put out new music because they have a system that works and a group of guys that like can make this work together for an extended period of time.
I agree. Coming off the release of their fifth studio album, Lament, in late 2020, the band would soon return to the road for the next 4 years, off and on, to support their new music. But in 2024, while playing a set at Outbreak Fest in Manchester, United Kingdom, the band would share that they'd been working, quote, tirelessly on a brand new album, opting to grace the ears of their fans that day with a brand new song called Nobodies. The official album announcement would come later on in the summertime with notice that the band had joined a new label, Rise Records, which would release the band's sixth album in October of 2024 entitled Spiral in a Straight Line. This album would be produced by Ross Robinson, who did their last album, Lament. I know him always from doing Anti-Mother from Norma Jean.
Okay.
He's done a bunch of different stuff. I know we've talked about him on other bands as well too. So he's a very popular producer up until this point. Kerrang.com writer Mishka Perlman wrote a review of the band's 2024 release stating, quote, "The trouble with writing a masterpiece is having to follow it up. Touché Amoré's first three albums, 2009 to the Beat of a Dead Horse, 2011's Parting the Sea Between the Brightness and Me, and 2013's Is Survived By were good. Very good, in fact. But in 2016, the Los Angeles band hit incredible new heights with Stage 4. It was an album born out of severe grief, inspired by the death of Jeremy Baum's mother from cancer and the trauma and depression it induced in the frontman. It remains an incredibly powerful tour de force and one of the most profound and moving records about mortality ever made. Listening to it even today, it's impossible not to hear how much its creation depleted Jeremy, but it's precisely how that combined with the band's pushing of the traditional post-hardcore template that made it a true magnum opus. It took 4 years for 2020's Lament to follow, but it lacked the spark and harrowing passion of its predecessor. Ironically, for a band who had pushed boundaries so much, it felt slightly like them trying hard to recapture the tragic magic of its predecessor. Another 4 years on from that, Touche have returned with Spiral in a Straight Line. It begins with the angst of Nobodies, a song that balances melody and existential terror to a near perfect degree before the breathless rush of disasters and its self aware neurosis takes over. It's an impressive start and one that, thematically at least, is maintained with Hall Ashby, a nod to the Harold and Maude director, whose name is invoked as Jeremy navigates his own insecurities and self doubt. But then as the song progresses, it begins to sound like familiar ground, as does Force of Habit. That's not a bad thing per se, and it's still better than what a lot of bands could manage, but it doesn't reach the high bar the Touche set themselves years ago. There are a couple of marvelous moments, namely the shape-shifting mezzanine and the agonizing regret of finalist, but often Spiral in a Straight Line settles into itself too much. This routine is touche by numbers, again, not necessarily a bad thing, just not incredible. While Subversion, Brand New Love, which features Dinosaur Jr. legend Lou Barlow, starts off promisingly, but suffers from the two sets of vocals jarring with each other. Album finale Goodbye for Now features Julian Baker, who's also appeared on the band's last two records. When her vocals kick in, the track finds its true and phenomenal force, but even though the song's final moments make for a remarkable crescendo, it's more an indication of what this album could have been. But then that's the trouble with writing a masterpiece. Everything will forever be compared to it. Songs on this album include Nobody's, Disasters, Hall Ashby, Force of Habit, Mezzanine, Altitude, This Routine, Finalist, Subversion, Brand New Love featuring Lou Barlow of Dinosaur Jr., The Glue, and the finale, Goodbye for Now featuring Julian Baker. The one thing, and I know we talked about in the original episode, um, I agree with what the reviewer's saying about Lament. It does seem to kind of take a dip. There was some good stuff on Lament in 2020. Um, and I like Touche's discography overall. Obviously, we talk about it with a lot of bands. We lean more towards the early stuff, and that's my jams of, To Be a Dead Horse through, Parting the Sea and Is Survived By. And Stage 4 is good, but we talked about in the original episode, it's like, man, it is hard to go back and listen to that album several times because, again, of what the material is about. It is
We know
so
too
hard.
much, Curtis. We
Yeah,
know too much.
yeah. So it's just like, man, it's just so hard to listen to that. But I never really felt, I mean, from what this reviewer is saying is they're really putting Stage 4 up there as, hey, this is the thing to compare it to. They say at the end, that's the trouble with writing a masterpiece. Everything will be forever compared to it. I just don't consider Stage 4 to be a masterpiece. It's a good album, but again, I feel like Touche is, when I think of Touche, I think of Parting the Sea. That's what I think is their masterpiece. And I know it's not what the genre that they've kind of pushed more towards now. But I don't know, man. Um, For me with this album though, I think it fits with the last two albums that they've done before with Stage 4 and Lament. It's not as much as what they did, in the early days. It's definitely different. And I feel like at this point, you're in this formula, and I'm just not enjoying the formula as much. There's still some good songs on here. I like Disasters, Force of Habit, Mezzanine, Altitude, or just a few to name. Um, but it just, again, I lean more towards those early days of Touche Amore, and that's if I'm going to listen to Touche, it's going to be the early stuff. Um, again, I think this is still a good album, but I'm not a fan of the direction that they're going musically. I think it really started. You started hearing it in "Is Survived By," I feel like, with his vocals, but you really heard it on Stage 4 in Lament when he starts kind of getting this kind of singing thing with it. And I'm not trying to hate on how he sings and how it sounds, but I didn't like that direction, and I think the music followed with it. But anyway, what are your thoughts, Josh, on Spiral in a Straight Line?
Um, the first time I listened to this a few weeks ago, I was in a really good mood. And then when it ended, I was kind of sad. It's kind of depressed. I think it's this band. I mean, we talked about it in the episodes where we covered them, but that's their jam. That's their whole
Yeah,
thing is kind of sad and depressing music. Um, I think their music's still 100% on point. Like we've
yeah, yeah.
lost no ground with the
No,
music.
no.
Um,
I still love those guitar tones, man. That is just beautiful. That like you're describing it, that Midwest kind of
mhm.
emo tones is like, so good, man. So good.
Yeah, they do that so well. I don't think you can bring up anything really in this genre without talking about Touche Amore. So,
Right.
um, I enjoyed the album. I didn't really feel like there was a down point in it. Um, for them, this feels like right on par. Did we talk about did we talk about Julian Baker in one of the other episodes?
Probably just the original Touche. I think that's the only thing that we've talked about,
Okay.
or at least mentioned her name before, because she has come up on the last two albums before
Right.
this one. I know her. She's done some stuff with Andy Hall and Manchester Orchestra, so I know her more from that too. But
Okay.
I think on this podcast we've only talked to her through the Touche stuff.
Okay. And then she's a part of that band called Boy Genius.
Is she? I
Yeah.
only knew her as like a solo person.
Okay. Yeah, she's a part of a
I
band
didn't
called
know.
Boy Genius.
Oh, it's a
I mean,
super group.
I
Okay.
think it's like yeah, but I think it was supposed to be like everything I read kind of seemed like it centered around her.
Okay.
Um I didn't really know anything about her and I didn't really remember discussing her. So when I saw her on here, I was like, oh, okay, like whenever I see a feature, I always look up that person, especially if I don't recognize the name.
For sure.
And so I looked her up, just kind of reading into her here and there, and I was like, oh my God, of course, like this is like his female counterpart.
Right. Yeah.
Like 100%. Like this is him if
It's
he
the
was a
female
woman.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
If he had a wig with long hair.
And I just thought that was funny. I was like, of course she's on this
Of
album. Like,
course.
I don't have a problem with her or her music, but I just thought that was so funny. I was like, oh man, yeah, this is him, but it's a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I thought it was really good. There wasn't a point in the album that really lost me. Um, the- I th- I think the only beef that I have with this album is on. No, it's not. Maybe. No. What's the one that starts out with him talking about thinking about putting on his seatbelt or not?
Oh man.
Is that mezzanine? No.
Let's see. Was it Force a Habit?
No.
Are you sure? Okay.
Maybe it is. I mean,
Let's see.
based on the song name, it feels like it would be,
Yeah, it
but
is. I've been
is
driving
it?
over
Okay.
half my life and I've had a few close calls, but if I wear a seatbelt at all, I hesitate for at least 80 seconds. It's a force of habit. It's a force of habit.
Yeah. This is the only song that like kind of briefly took me out of it for a little bit. I think you kind of come around like over the course of the song, but it's one of his songs that is put almost a little too bluntly. Like he has some of these every now and again, and I may have mentioned it in a previous episode, but every now and again they are few, I will say, because he does have a way with words, and I feel like he's good at articulating what he wants to without being this frank about it,
Over,
you
yeah.
know? But every now and again there is a song like this that lyrically it's just too on the nose. And it's just not, it's hard to put my finger on like exactly how to say this. The lyrics are just a little too repetitive and on the nose.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And he's a lot better than that. So when occasionally you hear one of those, and I'm talking like a maybe one per album type thing.
Right, yeah.
So when you hear those, it's just kind of disappointing because you know he's a lot better than that.
Right. Come on, Jeremy. You're better than this. And we know it. Yeah, I agree. I don't I know we've done this before in the past, and I bring it up with Eric sometimes too, and I hate doing it, but I always kind of wonder like how much further can we really go as a band? And I'm not trying to say when I ask that question, I'm never like trying to say it's my opinion, you guys need to break up now, you know. But like for what they're doing, I mean, you look at their discography overall with the lyrics. I mean, it's all pretty sad. It's pretty, emo. How much more can we do? You know?
Right.
I mean, I guess as long as people are still supporting you, then cool. But I would just kind of wonder at this point, this is your sixth album, and I don't know. I just always kind of wonder about the future when we get this far into a band, you
Right.
know?
How many good ones do you have left in the tank?
Right. And like I said,
It's
I
almost
I asked that like not in a way of you guys need to give up. Under oath, maybe, but
it's no, it's a realistic question, Curse. We put
right.
this question to a million bands. It's That's just what it comes down to. It's like how many amazing albums do you have in the tank? And on the high end, okay, a band puts out, let's say, six, seven, eight amazing albums over their entire career. Most bands will never reach that. But let's say six, seven, eight bands, like that's probably about the best you could hope for.
Right.
And so I think it's almost, that's what I was going to say, is it's almost more unsettling and nerve wracking when a band continues to put out good album after good album because you know the fall
You can't
like
you
is
continue to
coming.
just like stand on shaky ground. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I don't know, man.
I don't know that I'm worried about the course of a band like this. This is a very formula driven band.
I was gonna say, I think the thing with this band that would be concerning is all of a sudden we just take like a hard right or left turn on
Right.
genre wise. And it's like, oh
And
boy, what are we doing?
I don't think that will ever happen because
Right.
like
I
this
would
is
hope
their whole
not.
thing. Like this is the entire band. This is their whole thing. This what I'm sure they consider like this art form, this um
Avant-garde.
in between genres that they're driving in their own lane.
Right.
Not a lot of spoken word, Midwest emo bands out there. So
Oh, they're out there.
There's
You
some
just
out
don't know
there,
it.
but I would say that they,
Oh, they're coming.
Touche
Just
Amoré
wait.
like pioneered it.
Right. Yeah, I could agree with that. Agree with that for sure. Well, that's where we're at, Josh. I mean, just a few months removed. We'll see what the future holds with this band. Maybe eventually we'll come back again and see what's going on with them.
It's come out of the gate pretty hot. I mean, they still have, well, their monthly listeners aren't much to like 164,000, but this album already in only 2 months on Spotify.
Hmm.
The first track is done 100 and yeah, 100 or I'm sorry, 1,200,000.
Okay.
And then from
Lead
there it
single.
does fall off quite a bit.
Yeah.
But, we've got 400,000, 700, 300, 300, 300, 260. So it, I, I don't know. I feel like nobody just turned this album off.
No, 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 no. Well, and I
Like
think
if
again
you
too
came
with
here
the
looking for Touche Amore, you were satisfied with what you
right.
got.
I think the big difference between the first song and the rest of the songs is again, nobody's their lead single. And it came out, almost a year before the album release too. So
Right.
you gotta take that into context with the numbers there, but both show.
I don't have to do anything.
I'm a man. I'm a grown man. I don't have to do anything you tell me to do. All righty, Josh. Let's close the book on Touche Amore yet again. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at IsSurvivedByPro for news and the latest episode postings, and not just on this show, but our other shows as well. We have the History of the Course After Hours podcast, where I sit down with my good friend and avid listener of this very podcast, Eric, and we discuss some of the bands me and Josh have already discussed. We're going to actually have two, Josh, not one, but two brand new episodes come out this week of the After Hours podcast, talking about the band's Horse,
Whoa.
talking about the band's Horse the Band, and The Faceless. So be on the lookout for those two episodes. You might be interested in those, Josh, to hear what he has to say on those two bands.
I'm sure I'll be punching my radio.
We also have the Red Right Hand podcast, which has covered all 6 seasons of the BBC slash Netflix.
It's not for you. It's not for you.
The BBC slash Netflix show, The Peaky Blinders, and eventually we'll have our review on the movie. We also have the Throne of the Dragon podcast, which has covered season 1, season 2, eventually season 3 and season 4 of HBO's House of the Dragon. And this summer, 2025, season 1 of HBO's Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Yeah, and then we're doing some character profiles right now, and then starting in April, we'll start our readings, getting prepared for season 1 of Night of the Seven Kingdoms. So be on the lookout for that. Also, while you're on Twitter, make sure to follow my co-hosts at Josh, Will, and Gary. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review and write us a comment on whatever podcast service you're using. And if you want to listen to us and see our smiling faces, or hear Josh's overt rants over the top, head on over to our YouTube page. He's easily angered, or Spotify. Just search Is Survived by Productions. That'll have every episode from all of our shows. Subscribe to the channel. Thumbs up the video. Alrighty, Josh. The next time we do one of these album reviews, it's going to be on the band Flesh God Apocalypse. Their brand new album, which came out last year, 2024, Opera. And until then, we'll see.
Wait. We're doing it live. I didn't plug in my phone. We're doing it live. We'll end with this, Curtis. You people have been chosen to reveal our existence to the world. You will witness what happens here today. I'm going to tell about it later.